As regularly happens, the first reading is taken from the Old Testament, from a passage which refers indirectly at least to the theme of the Gospel. And so we have this handling of the question of some form of skin disease. It is referred to as leprosy, but there are various degrees of leprosy. And the contagious one has to be handled with energy, as was the case well into the Middle Ages. In Welsh, it's called separation disease, gwahanglwyf, and people had to be away from others. We know of the experience of now the canonized Father Damien, who did so much for the leper colony. The same happened with a missionary priest and bishop who died of the disease in the area that he was helping, and he was so good to them. This then is a disease which is frightening in its effect, and he was horrified when he first saw it. Stumps of people, bits of people, people mangled by progressive eating up of themselves by this disease. In the Gospel, the Lord wishes to heal, and he wishes to heal all who have this leprosy on the soul, and so must we. Every time a soul is before us, that soul is either already cleansed or to be cleansed. Failing that, it will go with its leprosy on and on. We priests have to have the heart of Christ, and this I will in our minds at all times. We wish to heal. And so we do the best with the soul before us, not to send that soul away, hardened and damaged and put off, placed beyond the pale, allowed to be thought of as precisely an untouchable, or to love that soul with that same will, I will, which is that of Christ the Good Shepherd. However, to do that, it must be with Christ the Teacher, who is the same as Christ the Shepherd. We cannot have two Christs, and the first mercy is that of transmission of truth. And people actually secretly desire it. They're not deeply satisfied by an answer which they sense to be pandering to their tastes. Secretly, if they are of good will, they want to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And if there is a problem in Ireland right now, it is partly because for a good generation by now, the whole truth is not often being heard, either in school or in church. And what is more, the church is being used as a podium for other things. It is the place where massively the people are gathered, and so how many times do we notice that it will be used, for instance, for an appeal for charity, and lay people also may in practice be doing the appeal at the moment of the homily, which for several reasons is not pleasing to the Lord. The people need the word. The people need somebody who is actually ordained to preach the word and graced to preach it. If one places a lay person there, already either the homily will disappear altogether or will be greatly shortened. And there will be therefore, first of all, a disobedience with regard to the clear will of the church, the homily always be preached when the people are gathered there on the day of the Lord, but also with regard to people doing what is not within their competence. Homily has a value parallel to that of the second part of the liturgy. Christ, the food of the soul, the bread of life. Christ is also the Word, and the two tables must be placed side by side in close juxtaposition. One cannot presume that the people are prepared for the bread of life if they have not been nourished already by the Word of life. One cannot presume that the people will have that nourishment if easily one jettisons that Word of life in favor of an instrumentalization of the assembly, of the homily, of the liturgy itself, so as to get out of them money, essentially. People need to have food for thought for the week, and just to have a reminder that we need their money is not sufficient food for thought. On the contrary, it can actually be off-putting. And when one goes to church and finds immediately at the church door, not at the church gate as it's requested, but at the church door, people collecting for this or that, people feel that actually they're being used. People of goodwill go to church, and when they find appeal after appeal, especially when it comes to taking the place of the Word of God, it's not fair. And so people leave. People actually do drift away. One more problem after another. It's only the last straw that broke the camel's back after all. And so we need to be careful. We can't presume on the goodwill of the people all the time. With regard, therefore, to what they need to arrive at the table of the Lord without leprosy on their soul. And therefore that Word of God must be challenging the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, even if actually it might be uncomfortable for the people, and therefore in turn for the priest, who might get the reaction of the people. But we have noticed, looking over the Catholic globe, that the places that are blessed with vocations, and actually with full churches, are not those that water down the message or easily jettison the Word of God for something human. They're not always the churches that are spectacular, that are actually, in the long term, efficacious. They're those that Christ is free to bless. They're those assemblies where the Spirit of God is not deflected, where a space is created where God and man can intertwine in an embrace of soul with soul, of heart with heart, of eyeball meeting eyeball. And therefore, the true place where God will bless and cause to flourish are those actually who combine quite often the best of the new with the best of the old. That is, the essence of love and charity and openness combined with a firmness and solidity, because one needs what has always worked to work again. E.g., why is it that vocations spontaneously spring forth there where families are as they were, where the faith is proclaimed as it was, whereas in situations where we've bent over backwards to adapt ourselves to this or that trend, meagre is the fruit. We've noticed in France, and also in other countries, that spontaneously vocations spring up when the same methods, essentially, are used again. Protection of the young, fullness of preaching, orientation towards encounter with God, not contaminated by the latest trend and fashion, which is a flash in the pan, spectacular and easily, immediately evaluated, but in the long term seen for what it is, especially when any vocations that come in such a flash in the pan, even after ordination, fritter away and are not able to withstand. Only a soul anchored in the ancient encounter of grace, undiluted and undeflected, can recount on the Spirit working again freely.